All right, so you might be working on your face. So here's some key things to think about when you're modeling your face. A lot of times when people describe, or when you first learn how to draw heads and things, they say that it's an egg shape. It's not really an egg shape. It's much more complicated than that. The best way to kind of look at it is maybe to combine it with like maybe an egg or an oval and a box. The cranium part of the head is more or less, which holds the brain, is more or less a circular, spherical form. But between the mandible of the jaw and the maxilla of the top part of the jaw, that creates sort of a box. So you can see it's more that shape than it is any sort of egg shape. Obviously your neck, your cervical vertebrae come off of this, and you would see that. A better way of even looking at it than that is to actually think of it as the different planes that create the head, and to think of the eminences. Okay, so the eminences basically are just where there's peaks, and so typically if you feel the top of your head, you'll feel kind of peak right in the center. You'll kind of see it on the side here. You can see it on Bruce Willis here, right? So there's kind of a peak to the top. Some people's are more pitched, some are less. Obviously, everyone's a little bit different. But there clearly is, like, this is straight, and then it starts to pitch up, and then it starts to pitch down. Okay, so those are the very eminences. Then, obviously, the ramuses of the jaw, where the elbow is of the mandible. And then right where the chin is another peak, right? The mental protuberance. And then if you look at it from the side, usually you'll have a sort of, from here, kind of flat up-ish. And then there's usually a peak that comes across, and then a peak that comes down. And then right where the occipital protuberance is basically where the next transfer is. And so you can kind of see there are basically these certain peaks. And it's a good idea to think of those. And if you put those together as a box model, you'd get something that looks sort of like this, right? So a low poly version, and then if you have smooth, you can see that's a basic head form. By just noting where those pieces are, you should be able to get a roughly decent looking head. But the main part to get out of this is don't look at it like a big doughy circle. Look for the peaks and try to draw lines to those. One of the things I like to do is use what I call like the head box, which this won't matter so much, but when you go to topology it will. Is that I try to think of, if you have a box, it always has these 3 pointed stars on each corner, and you'll see I do the same thing here. And I try to think of the head as those 4 or 6 panels. Well, it'd be 5 panels because I don't do the bottom one, right? So like there's a side panel, a front panel, a top panel, and a back panel. Okay. Some things to think about it is that if you cut the head in half horizontally, that's where the eye line is. It's also generally where the auditory canal matches up. The bottom of the nose usually matches up to the bottom of the ear, and the brow usually matches to the top of the ear. Now that obviously changes quite a bit because noses get longer as you get older, and ears get bigger as you get older too. Generally, a head is 5 eyes wide. I have definitely seen people who, so you have one eye from the outside in, then your actual eye, then one eye in between 2 eyes, and then one eye on the outside. I've definitely seen people whose eyes are farther apart than one eye, and definitely ones that are closer. If you cut the head in half this way, up and down, that's generally where the auditory canal is, and you'll notice that your jaw, right, which I have a very weak jaw, comes up and inserts just before the auditory canal. So it's kind of a good spot that about halfway, if you look at the head from the side, that's where the jaw is going to insert, okay? And again, the head is 1 head tall, 3/4 of a head wide, and 7/8 of a head deep. But look for planes. Most of the time, you might have noticed when we talked about like the anatomy earlier, like with the chest and like the torso and stuff, you usually have planes that work in opposition. So I have a plane going this direction, and then there's a plane at the top of the eye coming down like this. Then the nose and cheek, right? And then kind of coming in where the nasolabial fold is. And then the upper lip, right? And then the dip of the lip here, and then the bottom lip. But you'll see it goes back and forth, back and forth. And that's kind of what catches light and what catches shadow. Try not to make the face too doughy. Look for areas of flatness. There's ridges that you can create a stronger form in. When you're paying attention to your model, the things that are going to be the most important are what's in red and then up. So when you're modeling, be it traditionally or if you're sculpting, what I want you to do is spend a lot of time on the eyes first and foremost, then the mouth, right? Then kind of the nasolabial area, right? Then the nose and ears and forehead, and then basically work your way out. Because these are the things that people look at first. People generally look at the trifecta here. They'll look at the eye here, they'll go back here, then down in the mouth, then back up to this eye, and they repeat back and forth. Okay? And it creates this triangle visual pattern that people do when they're communicating with each other in order to read emotion. So it's very important that you spend a lot of time on these aspects, because that's what people are, when they're viewing your stuff, is that's what they're going to be looking at. This is just a guide where you can see where the ear loop is. You can see that it sort of forms this sort of curve, okay, as it goes around. Just, I like with clothing and stuff, I would just look at reference and look at actual ears when you're going to sculpt it and just try to match it as best you can. When you're thinking the nose is more or less just box shape, okay? They'll have what they call like the cornerstone, which is this part here, and then the eyes are on either side of this. It's kind of where basically the nose bleeds into everything else, all right? But you want to kind of form this sort of box shape and look for planes. Look for ridges. Don't just make it round. Generally speaking, even people, and my nose is relatively round, there still is a sort of plainness to it. You know, try to add a philtrum. When you're modeling the lips, one big mistake that people make is they don't push in the corners. If you look at the lip here, right? See how it's kind of flat facing outwards here, but then it curves in and cuts inwards. See right here, I kind of put a plane over it. It kind of goes in. So you want, if we were to look at so you can see how this one looks terrible, right? It's just a hole in a shape. See how it doesn't look right? If you look at it from a top 3/4 view, you can see why. If I look at this one, which looks more correct, I mean, it still looks a little weird, but it definitely has the creases in the side. It's because the mouth needs to kind of turn inwards, okay? You also will notice that when you look at the ridges of the upper lip, it's much tighter. The upper lip will have a tight lip. See it, the angle here is much stronger, while the bottom will be more round, okay? The eyes, again, are the most important thing. Just make sure that you're making them asymmetrical. Typically, if you were to take the peak of the top and bottom, the peak on the top will be towards the inside, and the peak of the bottom will be towards the outside, okay? But that's one of those things that you have to spend a lot of time on, because that's how to a large extent, your character is going to be acting. It's the first thing people look at. It's also one of the things that you will notice that as people get older, different features change. Your cheeks droop. Like I said, your nose gets longer. Your ears droop. Your mouth will actually lower. If you take like a pencil and stick it, you know, if you close your mouth and stick a pencil, you'll probably, because you're younger, you'll hit your top teeth. Okay? But when you get older and like, I don't know, like 60 and above, you do the same thing. You'll actually hit the bottom teeth. Your mouth actually droops down a little bit. The one thing that doesn't change, as though, you know, you might get wrinkles and what have you, are the eyes. You can tell someone as a child just based off of their eyes. Okay. So yeah, that's face stuff. So you just want to continue work on your model. Try to get it basically, as far as the modeling is concerned, have it finished being sculpted, so add all those surface details. You want to add the texture, and you basically want to just export it out. Okay? All right, so good luck.